Welcome back, everybody, to Clicks and Bricks. My name is Ken. Today is September 24th, and we have a very special guest, Neil Saltman, and today we're going to be talking about building your executive network. But before we get started, today's episode is brought to you by Nlink.com. My Nlink.com account is nlink.com/Ken. It's got all of my social media profiles on there, so you know you don't have to go to all these different URLs. You can go to nlink.com/Ken, and you have my TikTok, my Instagram, my LinkedIn, my PayPal, my Cash App. All of my applications are social media networks in one location. The thing I like most about nlink.com is that for your Facebook and your LinkedIn profiles, it gives you your personal and your business profile. So it's really great for business profiles as well. Let's go ahead and get started. Chris, can we bring Neil in? How you doing, Neil?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for showing up. So today we're going to be talking about building your executive network, and not only did you do that, you wrote a book on that as well, too.
Yeah. So the book is specifically on cybersecurity sales, but a lot of it's focused on executives and those that make the decisions. And so, yeah, it's definitely an area where I've built my career around.
Right. So to be able to sell cybersecurity to CFOs and security officers, you have to first have an executive network to sell it to, right? So that's kind of the first step. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey and what clicked in your head to say, I need to build this executive network?
Yeah. So it all started with a job I didn't get. So about a decade ago, probably a little bit more, I was in technology sales. A buddy of mine called and said, "Hey, I'm working for this amazing company, and I think you should really take a look at it." So he got me an interview. Interview went phenomenally well. My hour-long interview turned into like two and a half hours. And then at the end, when I thought he was going to offer me the job, he said, "All right, I need to know 10 security leaders or cybersecurity executives that you could introduce us to tomorrow." And I said, what every sales guy would say. I said, pick an account and I'll get you in there. He said, "No, I don't think you understand." He said, there's about a 6-month ramp, meaning that you've got to have active sales cycles because our sales cycles are more than 6 months. And if you don't close any deals within that time, I'm going to have to fire you, which isn't good for you and it's not good for me. And I realized I didn't have enough relationships with executives to take their call because they like Neil. I was certainly an aggressive sales rep and creative, but I didn't have an executive network that could help me get the job I wanted. So then I thought, man, what can I do to make sure this never happens again? And so hence the idea was born, where I started to build out my executive network after that.
Fantastic. So I want to take just one step back, because one of the things you said is wildly important there, that sales cycle. And a lot of our viewers are small, medium-sized business, and their sales cycle they think is really short, right? Oh, somebody comes in our door and they make a purchase. But when we're really talking about sales cycle, we're talking about total lifetime value of the customer and a lot of other details, right? So, and I know this because I sell IT services. 6 months, I think, is a very reasonable sales cycle for anything in IT. I do co-location a lot, and I've got sometimes a 5-year sales cycle for when we're talking like a 10 or 20,000 square foot space, right? That's years of planning and things like that. And it's wildly important for a sales manager to have that number, because what you just said is perfect, right? It's going to take you 6 months to close your first deal, so you need to come in hot and running. You need to have relationships already built. And
yep.
So, and I used to talk about this a lot, and when you're an employee working for a company, you should 100% be focused on building your company's brand, but in the back of your head, you should be building your own brand as well the whole time. Building your LinkedIn profile and getting your profile together and building your personal network that doesn't conflict with your current job and doing your sales, but is an asset for you as a person, not only inside that company, but also if that company were to let you go or make a decision to no longer keep you employed, you have now also an asset that you can leverage to either go on to work for yourself or for somebody else, especially in sales.
Yeah, and I'll even add to that. You said, on the sales cycle side, one of the best pieces of advice I was given by one of my mentors was, don't treat people like a transaction. So even if you're a transactional business, a small business or a large business, doesn't matter. Even if it's a one-off deal, when you treat people like a transaction, they know it. And so regardless of your sales cycle, you always have to think long-term and not how quickly can I get their money, or else you're setting yourself up for a world of trouble anyway.
Right. So if somebody say you're 23 years old, 22 years old, you just got out of college, and you're going to go look for a job, and you want to be a security or a cyber IT salesperson, and you decide, hey, I need to start building my network before I even start looking for a job, which will probably get you a job in the act of doing it anyway. It's just a secret way of doing it, right? What would be the first thing that you would advise them to do?
Yeah, so I actually have done this. So it's funny. Yeah, it's a good question. So I think you look up the companies that are interesting. If you don't know who those are, you can either ask people or do some research. You know, there's this amazing thing called the internet and Google where you can find all kinds of companies.
Right.
And I think when you reach out to people on a personal level in a genuine way and you say, hey, I'm really interested in what company XYZ is doing. I know you're there. Would you be open to a discussion? I just want to learn more about it. And you'll find that people want to help you along the way in the journey. So I think the first step is identifying some things that you're interested in, and then having a discussion with people that know more about it than you. That's a genuine discussion. And again, not treating it like a transaction. You don't reach out to them and say, oh, you work for ABC company. I'd really like to work there. How can I do that? And more of why did you pick ABC company? What are you doing that's making you successful? How could I use that there or somewhere else? And you'll find that people want to help you along the way in the journey. But if I was coming out of college, I'd start pinging people in those companies, not asking for jobs, but asking for intelligence so I can leverage that there and in other places.
And sometimes, so when my reach out, and I do this every day, but for you to even be on this podcast, I reached out to you and said, hey, I'm growing my network. Would you be my friend? And you said yes. And then I didn't immediately say, hey, be on my podcast. I went to your profile and looked at it, said, oh, he's written a cybersecurity book. He's built his network, right? He's got some other stuff. And our first conversation, I had information about you that was relevant to you. So you knew it wasn't just this one and done kind of transaction, that we actually cared about the quality of our product and all those other things, that we had the right people. Is that a very similar approach that you would take for building an executive network?
Yeah, it's also funny you point out, LinkedIn being a big medium right now in general, and probably will be forever. But what really drives me crazy, and I think everybody else, is when somebody reaches out and tries to sell you something. I think it's the soft touch like you had, where it's the, hey, let's connect. You're interesting. Let's have a conversation. And the smaller the ask, the better off you are, right? Treat LinkedIn like as if you're texting somebody. If you texted somebody you didn't know and say, hey, do you want to buy my product? You're going to get blocked. If you text somebody and say, hey, really interesting, saw you wrote a book, I'd love to discuss it with you, all of a sudden you're stroking my ego. You've done nothing that's making me run away. And I think that's the key, especially with executives, is reaching out with something that's relevant to them, but a soft touch. Don't make a major ask, right? Not, do you want to look at my product and maybe purchase it? It's, I found something interesting about you. I'd love to discuss this. And here's what I could possibly do in return. And I'll even go further. And I was having this conversation with a buddy yesterday, is never make it about you. Like you read emails all the time and it's like, I want to talk to you. I saw that you wrote this book. I'm very interested in. Immediately, I'm going to shut that off.
Right.
If it's, you got to turn it around and make it about the other person and read it before you send it, and read it out loud and think, if I was receiving this, would I respond to it?
Right. Another trick, because sometimes you do want to talk about you in those conversations, and a little trick that I do, and it means so much to me, and I think it means a lot to other people, but I really don't know, is if I do say I never actually say I always say we, meaning my team, right? Because it's never, for inside of my businesses at least, it's never about just me. It's always about my team and the relationship that we can build and partnering to grow together, right? So I use the term we a lot instead of the I, if I do want to talk about the company or my desires, right? Because my desires are really the company desires, and that's a we conversation, not an I conversation.
Yeah, no, and that's interesting. But even that, I mean, I'd say just skip straight to the point, right? Don't start with the, are you having a good day and I'd like to talk to you. Just go right into the, I run a podcast. I think you're an interesting person. There's no I in that.
Right, and then I look at that as like the movie theater. If there's a pretty girl in front of you, you don't say, "Hey, you're a pretty girl." You say, "Hey, I love your shoes," or "That's a cool purse," or something like that. You don't go right for the, "Hey, let's get married tomorrow," because you're gonna scare her off, right?
Yeah.
Even though that's what you want to do. Like, "Hey, this is the perfect person I want to do business with." I think this would be fantastic. You have to make sure that the value for them is good. And I know that I think everything that you're saying. I follow Gary Vee quite a bit, and you're almost exactly describing his jab, jab, jab hook, right?
Yeah.
That Hey, you wanna nurture that relationship, But you have a goal in mind. You have to make the ask, right? You're going to do the nurturing. You're going to have that conversation. But nobody wants to do business with people that they want to do business with people like them, right? Not.
Yep.
And today's world, we're bombarded with constant. I mean, I know I get auto dialers 5 to 10 times a day of people saying, buy my product, right?
Oh yeah.
And you have to imagine that everybody in the world's getting that, I would assume.
Yeah, well,
right?
and I'll say, I mean, that's why I built my executive network, what I've been doing. So Chief Information Security Officer is cybersecurity executives. That's what they are. So I run a CISO roundtable every month that I've been doing for over 3 years. I was doing it long before that, but consistently every month for 3 years. And that's usually my hook is an honest question is, hey, I'm running a meeting where you can meet your peers and talk to your peers, and I'd love to include you because I think you'd be a valuable contributor. There's nothing in there that says you're going to buy my product, but my tagline clearly says my company name, and it says this is my work. So they know, I mean, there's no hidden agenda. I mean, ultimately, I want to extend my network, and certainly I want to sell more product because that's how I pay my bills. But I'm not asking them to buy it. All I'm asking them to do is to show up to my meeting with other executives that's beneficial to them, and then later I'll ask them, hey, do you want to take my call? But it's not a rush to the dance. It's not a, it's definitely not a, hey, do you want to buy my product? I mean, even in my book cover, like I jokingly put, do you want to see my product? Hey, do you have a minute? And those are the lines that everybody uses is like, hey, can I get 5 minutes to talk to you about my product?
Right.
I delete. I can't imagine somebody who has a lot more buying power than me with millions to billions of dollars is going to be like, oh, well, this is interesting. Yeah, I have a minute for you.
Right, and that's all goes back into sales cycle and being available to a potential client when they're ready to purchase. Right, I feel like all the time we're being, you should. I've got a really good friend that lives in Colombia. And we talk about this all the time. Everybody's selling ingredients, but nobody's selling the recipe. Right? And the recipe is, to have a successful website in my business, there's a lot of pieces, right? To have a secure network, there's a lot of pieces, right? You have to have backups, you have to have firewalls, you have to have audits, you have to have governance. Like, you have to have all of those pieces. And, even Cisco's out there selling the firewall piece or the log monitoring piece, and, this other company, SolarWinds, is selling the monitoring piece and the governance piece. So, nobody's selling. Well, you probably are as a consultant selling the whole package, right? Is what I would assume. And they're getting bombarded with these, hey, buy my salt or buy my flour. And you're coming at them saying, hey, I'm the consultant that's going to do this whole encompassing security platform for you and then deploy it into your company. And
I actually do sell a product, but I do take the holistic approach. So I take the approach of, let's talk about solving problems and then where I fit in that equation. And I do take the consultative approach of, let's talk about the whole picture and here's where we fit in and here's why you start with us. And if you don't, that's okay. Here's where we come in later. But even though I sell I don't want to call it a point product because it is a platform, but point being, I do sell one product or a couple products, but I don't talk about it as one product. I talk about it as a solution, that's nothing new. But I mean, I talk about it in a sense of what problems are we solving versus here's what my product does.
Correct, which is a huge difference, right? Because you're not saying, hey, you need to buy my product. I hate it when somebody tells me I need to buy their product and they have no idea my current business.
Right.
Like, how do you know what I need? Like,
right.
And I see it also with new employees a lot. Right, I'll hire a new employee and they'll come in like, we need to do this and we need to do this, and they're being all aggressive, trying to show their worth in the company. And I tell them very frequently, like, okay, you need to just dial it down and go through training, and then once you've been through training and you know where we're at, then you can start making recommendations and stuff like that. But nobody wants the recommendations until you at least know where you're at. So in security, I'm assuming that's some kind of security evaluation or audit or something like that you provide as that initial.
Even a discussion. I mean, I had someone say to me, and I love this analogy, I use it all the time, is he said, don't throw axes over the fence and hope that they stick. And I get this visual of like a medieval times guy sitting by a moat, watching axes land in the grass and throwing them into the water.
Right.
And it's funny because his point was, even if you hit one of these, even if one sticks, I'm going to know what you were trying to do. I'm going to throw it away anyway. So, it's definitely understanding who you're talking to and what their challenges are makes a lot more sense. And we do a lot of proof of concepts, POCs. And he also made the comment that if you offer to do a POC in the first conversation, I'm going to assume that you have no clue what I'm doing, and that you're likely just trying to see how quickly you can jam a solution in and hope that it works. He said, if that's the first discussion you want to have with me, then I'm going to assume that this is the conversation we're having with everybody, is how quick can I do this versus actually understanding what I'm trying to solve.
Right. So, and your phrase is throwing axes over a fence, hoping they stick. And I've used the opposite of that: BBs, bullets, cannons. Right.
Okay.
So I'm not going to just throw cannons on step one. I'm going to shoot BBs. Right. I'm going to see, and then that worked. I'm going to make that bigger effort, and then if that works, I'm going to make that effort even larger again. So.
Okay. Yeah.
It's a similar concept on the other side of the equation. So, fantastic. So, and how large is your network now? If building the executive network, right? What is a KPI or a key performance indicator of success in building an executive network?
Yeah. So how big is it? To answer the first question, so I not that good at math, so I can't answer the exponential piece. But I'll say that the way I started it was I brought a few decision makers out to lunch. So let's grab lunch. Let's talk about security. I just want to be, I want to be part of the discussion. I want to learn. And so we started out with 6, and then I said, a month later, let's see who else wants to join. Then it was 8, then it was 10, then it was 12, then it was 14, then it was 20, then it was 30, and now I think there's 75 or 76 people that are on my monthly invite list. It's virtual because of the current circumstances.
Right.
But I think there's 76 people that get invited every month to this meeting, and they're all people that are decision makers within large companies that
and they show up.
And they show. I probably get 20 to 30 to show up every month, but just about every one of them is at least in some continuous contact with me. So it's grown exponentially. But what's changed it over time was initially it was me, the sales guy, asking them to come, saying, "Hey, what do you think?" And then it became their peers saying, "Hey, this is interesting. I think you should join." And now I've got my own army of people selling this idea for me and building out my relationships. And it's been really good. And it's made me incredibly valuable because people pay a lot of money for these type of events, and I'm doing them for free, and that comes with me wherever I go.
Right. So, and then 75 doesn't seem like a huge number, but for the guests that are watching, in cybersecurity, if you have 100 cybersecurity decision makers at Fortune 500 companies, that's a life-changing number. Right? Especially what you're basically doing is you're setting yourself up as an industry, the word's missing me right now, but an expert in your field, right? Yeah. So when they have a cybersecurity question, where are they going to go? They're going to bring it to your roundtable that you've created.
Yeah, and I would actually, so it's a good point. So to give an idea of the dynamics, that every one of those guys has a 7-figure spend. So they're spending a lot of money, and so the amount of money that's able to be spent at that table is significant. That's not all going to me by any means, not even a percentage of it.
Right.
If you compare it, but point being, you're right. I mean, I'm not selling houses where everybody's a potential customer. I'm selling cybersecurity to enterprise customers where if you're not a certain size company, it's probably not a great target for me. So the people coming are all people who are buying large spend, and so it's an executive network. It's not everybody show up, Neil's going to buy dinner type of thing.
Right. And that is the importance there, is knowing your audience and knowing who your client is so important, right? So you've been able to create a world of, these roughly 75 executives that are coming to you on a regular basis. You're now the Snickers bar of cybersecurity for them. Right? You're in the checkout line for them. You've got the relationship. When they need something, they just come and then you check it out. And that's because to get a cybersecurity client with traditional marketing needs of any significant size, I'm gonna make a wild guess here. And have you tried to do any like traditional or online marketing to get clients, Neil? Have you tried that at all?
I mean, we have a marketing team that does that, and I would say that there's a lot of it going out there, but it's you said early on, right? It's creating your own brand. Right. And so I did this before I got to this company, and so those efforts are helpful because it helps me get into more accounts, helps me have more discussions with decision makers there. But I now have an excuse to escalate inside that account. When I'm meeting with XYZ middle manager, I can then say, hey, it'd be interesting is if we talk to your C-level security executive, let's have this discussion because, by the way, here's another thing I can bring valuable. I can introduce you to a bunch of his peers, a bunch of her peers when they, every month at this meeting, and then they can ask any questions they have related to my product or otherwise.
Right.
And so it gives me a reason where I'm making them look good as, hey, here's what I can bring versus let's get on the phone with them and see if they really want to spend money.
Right.
Like that, that's not as well received.
And a chief security officer, for most people in the world, would probably be a fairly eccentric person, right? It's a hard person to get a hold of. They have a little bit of cowboy in them. They have a little bit of, really corporate America, strict structure. And their job is really, really challenging. Right? I mean, you're dealing with a situation in cybersecurity today where you just assume that everything's hacked and you're constantly trying to get hackers out and keep new people from getting in. So there's a little bit of, it's scary to be a CSO. It's
you're trained not to trust anyone.
It's a scary place to be. And so having peers in that group is probably wildly valuable to them to have somebody to talk to and, I got this exploit last month, or is this email real kind of stuff, right? Just somebody, a sounding board, if anything else.
Well, what's interesting is some of the discussions that happen that I don't think about on the outside looking in, and it's a sounding board for them to ask each other. One of the guys in my meeting this week, because our monthly one was this week, was asking how he actually quantifies the metrics to prove that his security program is working when he reports up. He's running a new program, and he had a chance to hear other leaders talk about it. And those aren't things I typically think about. I go in and say, look at all these problems I can solve, but I don't think about it from a program perspective. I don't look at it and say, where are you at in your, you put together 5 phases, where are you at in your program and where can I help with that? I typically go in and talk about, more granular problems. And I don't think about the big pictures often until I have these discussions and I start thinking, well, wait a minute. You are building a program. What phase are you in that? Where does that fit in? So those conversations that you have make you start to think like them instead of like your manager or whoever it is that tells you, oh, well, you're just not high enough. You just need to get in front of the executive. And the reality is that he may have tasked 5 people and there's a reason for it. And you may be talking to the right person. You just need to understand what they were tasked with and how that's going to get back to the executive. It's not that the executive has to be in the conversation. You just have to understand what it is they're trying to solve and what they've tasked their people to do.
Right. And then sometimes you're just talking to influencers, right? And they're getting them and then so having an influencer network is also huge for your industry, right? It might not be for you, it might not be security executives, it might be security executive secretaries or something along those lines. Because
you could have the admins, that'd be gold, yeah.
Yeah, so then you could bust through those because they're the gatekeepers, right? Or everybody's got a gatekeeper of some kind. If it might be voicemail or it might be a real person, but you got to figure out how to get through that. So fantastic. Well, we're cruising right along here, Neil. I'm sure we could probably talk forever, and I've got some ideas that I'd like to talk to you outside of this. We can wrap up, talk about those offline. But there's the last question I have for you. I think we've gone through your tips and tricks already. Is if there's one piece of technology that you really enjoy or you think that really changed the game for you in building this executive network, what do you think that would be? And if you got 2, feel free to share them both.
Well, I'll start with Zoom, and I'll say that web meetings in general give you access to people that executives don't have a whole lot of time. Everything's limited, and we used to be in a world where it was, hey, let's grab lunch. It was like, okay, let's do it 6 weeks from Tuesday. A Zoom meeting, you get a chance to meet face to face, and you can take that 15-minute window without them ever leaving the desk. So I would say Zoom is one, and the second one is LinkedIn. It's getting a little more difficult because of all the individual reach out of people saying, come buy my product. Immediately, if I don't know who you are, I delete you. It tends to be the trend now. But for a long period of time, Sales Navigator inside LinkedIn was a good way to reach out because it wasn't flooded like the inbox. And if your message was direct and you treat it like a text message, like hey, real quick, here's what I think is valuable to you. Any interest in discussing, as opposed to I want to sell my product. I think that's been game changing. It's going away a little more because it's getting overwhelming. I think probably since we've been on this conversation here, I'm sure I have 15 messages on, do you want to buy my product? So it's getting a little bit worse, but that was game changing too for a while.
Yeah, and I think that to add to that, for me, what's been huge recently is the Zoom integrations. like my Zoom integration with Calendly has been a huge help for me. That I can literally just book meetings that are right into Zoom. It shows up my Zoom profile. It helps me keep organized, and it really helps me do a massive amount of meetings in a day, right? Whereas before, a sales guy 20 years ago might take 4 appointments a day, and today you can literally take 20 15-minute meetings back to back in Zoom and really be wildly efficient. So I would agree, Zoom's been a huge help, and I think unfortunately COVID, I think, pushed them quite a bit, and they've gotten a lot of their end-to-end encryption done. It's really become a more secure world for people to use since COVID as well. And since their massive adoption in the last 18 months, new features have been rolling out, but also competitors have been rolling out to Zoom, right? So there's, I always recommend watch out for the new kid on the block, because he could come with some brand new tech that just blows your mind. But he might not have the integrations with all the third parties yet. So is there anything else that you would like to add? Where can they find your book? If somebody wanted to buy your book, Cybersecurity Sales, where would they go to get that?
Yeah, so it's on Amazon. The guy I co-wrote the book with, Anthony Johnson, owns a company called Delve Risk, and he's got it on his website as well. And just to give a little bit of perspective on that, I actually co-wrote the book with a cybersecurity leader, and it's a buyer's and seller's perspective, which made it interesting as well. But Amazon would be one place to find it, or delverisk.com on Anthony's website would be the other place.
All right. So I have not read the book yet. Is there an audio version?
There is.
There is an audio version. So
a much nicer voice than me to
I will commit to listening to it for sure.
Awesome.
Because I don't read very much, but I listen to books almost every day. So, and then can you tell us a little bit about is it storyline? Because the front kind of looks comic booky. Is it graphic novel? Like, can you tell us a little bit about what kind of read that would be? Because cybersecurity just seems like the most darn interesting stuff to read about in my mind.
It's funny, he says. My wife hated the cover because it looked like a comic book.
Yeah.
I thought it was like the greatest thing I ever saw, and the child in me said I have to use this. So I did a comic book like cover. But no, it's so what we did is we took different topics within cybersecurity, things like budget, things like negotiation, things like questions to ask, meetings that are valuable, generally some contemplations they have. We even went into archetypes of different type of cybersecurity leaders and backgrounds, because some are former developers, some are former governance risk auditor type people, some are just pure technologists. And so we broke down different archetypes as well. So we took it, as Anthony put it, it's like watching a movie and getting two perspectives. So every chapter is written from a buyer's perspective and a seller's perspective, which would be like the hero and the sidekick. Okay. And so it's an interesting read because you get two perspectives on each topic. I tried to use some personal stories in there that made me laugh, and some of them you'll probably look at and be like, this guy likes dad jokes way too much. But overall, I think it was. I've heard it was a good read, and obviously I'm biased, but I think it was a fantastic read.
Fantastic! I can't wait to hear it. I think it'd be fun. Cybersecurity is, something I deal with on a regular basis. It's not my favorite topic by a long shot. I like building and being loosey-goosey with stuff, and that's why I have guys that will lock it all down for me after I'm done. But so having some knowledge out there that isn't really dry to read is probably pretty important for people, especially if they're trying to get into the industry, or just get a change of pace for what they're reading and listening to. So thank you for making that effort. I do appreciate it. Do you have anything else you'd like to share with the audience before we go?
No, I mean, the only thing I'll say is I like to say I wrote the book on cybersecurity sales because it didn't exist. And I think the one thing that I would say is I get a lot of people asking, why did you do it? How did you do it? And everybody seems to want to write a book. It's not that tough. I mean, you just got to dedicate a couple hours a week and do it. And my recommendation, whether it's an executive network or a cybersecurity sales book or whatever else you want to do, is it doesn't happen until you do it. So just make the effort, and good things will happen.
Yeah, and I would add, and maybe you can clarify here if you agree with me or not, writing the book is the easy part, selling the book is the hard part.
Yeah, everybody gave me the advice of make sure you have a goal in mind when you write it. And I'll be honest, I didn't. I wrote it, and to that point is all the marketing so far has just been word of mouth and LinkedIn, and it's actually sold quite a bit.
Right.
Because the guy I wrote it with has a really huge following, and obviously I have a few friends as well. But
right. Well, you had an audience to sell it to immediately. You did take a different cover, right? So that's somewhat an approach, right? Because it's going to stop you. That's a unique cover for cybersecurity. It's going to stop you in your tracks, right? I know we're getting a little bit into marketing on this side, but I think it's important for people to know, like, if you can write a book, yeah, it's going to be challenging to write the book, but if you don't have a goal of selling the book at the end, you'll sell some copies, right? You'll put it on Amazon Direct, you can do Amazon Publishing, you can put it out there, and you will sell some copies, but without having a plan, without having a website, a funnel, a marketing list, and a network, you're going to have a lot of challenges, right? So if you're going to write a book and you're going to go down that path, you can probably reach out to Neil for advice, and you can reach out to me for advice as well. We help people build websites to sell their books on a regular basis. So fantastic. I appreciate your time today, Neil, and I'll reach out in the next couple of days. We'll get you all this content, and we'll just talk through some different ideas and see if we can come up with something fun to work on together. That's it for today, folks. Get to work.